Last week, we started learning about the next man. I guess we could say it this way. We could say it, this is one of the ways we could say it. The next man in the Bible. We started learning from the next book in the Bible, the sixth book in the Bible. Book number 6 has a man's name. Who did we learn about last week? Serenity? Who? Joshua. That's right. Boys, we already just said that we're going to listen. But look at his hands. Okay? We're all three not doing what we should do. We probably need to be a little separated from one another.
Steven, get back here now.
Right. That'll help some, but then we got to get these guys, Jackson and Aaron, not to goof off. Can you pay attention and not talk? See, Jackson, you're still trying to goof off. Yeah. Okay, so we learned about Joshua last week. What did we learn about Joshua last week? Do you remember something that we learned about him? Do you remember something? He loved God and he speaks nice. He helped people, okay. Those are all good things and probably true, but that's not some stuff that we learned last week. We learned certain things about Joshua last week. Let's let Ian give us one of them.
He's got to lead the people, isn't he?
We learned that he's the new leader. Okay, so he's the new leader. We learned some other things, Stephen, about Joshua. What do you remember some things that we learned about him? In the Bible? Or in the Word of God?
He took all the people about Moses.
Okay, so he is going to take them across the river. We don't know how they're going to get across the river. God spoke to Joshua. And when God spoke to Joshua, what did Joshua do? What did he do when God spoke to Joshua? What did he do? Serenity? Let's let this one. He took them around? No. Do you remember God spoke to Joshua? And what did he do? What did Joshua do when God spoke to him? Ian?
He obeyed and did what God said.
He listened. He believed. And he obeyed. And he did it. So he obeyed. Ian got to the last one. But you can't do what God says if you're not listening, if you don't know what he says, right? And you're not going to do what he says if you don't believe it, right? You say, well, I don't believe that. I'm going to do what I want to do. Or sometimes we might say we believe it, but if we still go and do what we want to do we really believe? So, but Joshua heard what God said. He listened to what God said. He believed what God says, and we know that he believed what God said because he went and obeyed and did what God said. And we could learn from Joshua from what we learned last week because we could do all those same things, couldn't we? We can listen. Jackson, go sit with Miss Megan over there. Go sit with Miss Megan. But you're not going to because you just were hitting him. You weren't hurting him, but you were hitting him. Go sit with Miss Megan. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go sit with Miss Megan. So, God speaks to us, and if we're going to be like Joshua, what do we need to do? The same things that Joshua did, right? We need to listen to God. We need to believe God. And we need to obey God. So how does God speak to us? Where does God speak to us? Does God speak in the thunder? No. Abby? In the Bible. That's right. And that's why we say, that's why Pastor Vogelin says every week, that if we will read the Bible, understand it, and obey it, we can have a peaceful and joyful life. It doesn't matter if bad things happen to us, we can still have peace in our heart and joy in our heart, even if sad things happen to us. Because joy and being happy are two different things. We can have joy even when we're sad, if we know that God is with us and that we're obeying God. So, Joshua listened, believed, and obeyed God. Now, Joshua was within the camp of the Israelites right here. Okay? He's here. This is all 12 tents. There's more than 12 tents, but those 12 tents represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And it is just about time for them to go over into the land of Canaan. Right? The land of Canaan. What's another way we have described the land of Canaan? Do you remember? Do you remember the... No. Go ahead. No, okay, so we're not... Amos. The promised land. Canaan was the promised land, and no holy land. And it was promised to the children of Israel. The children of Israel are here, and they're not in the land God promised them. But does God keep His promises? Well, we're going to see, aren't we? So, how many of you have ever made a promise to somebody? Said like, I promise you. Have you ever said that? I promise you. Does anybody mind telling me something that they promised someone else? Josh, you remember telling them? You do. You want to? Can you mind telling them? You don't want to tell what you promised? Okay. Does someone else remember something that they promised? I promised that. Amos? Okay. So Amos says that once he promised Moses a piece of candy. Now that's not a very hard promise to keep, but did you keep your promise? He didn't! How many of you ever made a promise and didn't keep it? Yes. All of us have promised, we've said, or maybe we didn't use the word promise, but we said, yes, Mom, I'll do that, right? Okay, and then we don't do it. We broke our word, didn't we? We broke our promise. Now, God promised the people of Israel that He was going to give the land of Canaan to them. He also promised them that even though the people in the land of Canaan were very strong and very powerful, that He was going to make it so that they were weak and had no heart to fight. Now that's not an easy promise to keep, is it? But we're going to see today that God kept that promise. Joshua is over here, and he was thinking, I wonder how strong the people on the other side of the river are. I wonder if they have lots of spears in their cities or whatever. So he thought, I'm going to send some spies over into the land. Now that sounds scary. Sending spies in, doesn't it? Why does it sound scary? To me, that sounds scary. There's a couple reasons. Why might it be scary to send spies into the land? Why?
Because they will take the people away.
They might get caught, wouldn't they? And then they might not be able to come back, right? That would be scary. Can you think of something else?
They watch you.
To watch you. That's right. They might see those spies, and then what would they do to them? Can anybody think of a different reason, totally different reason why it might be scary to send spies into the land? Can anybody remember what happened the last time we sent some spies into the land?
No.
What happened the last time we sent spies into the land?
I need you to back up.
Go. What's that?
Someone lied.
They lied. they sent 12 spies in, and 10 lied about the land, and 2 were good, Joshua and Caleb. So, I don't know if Joshua was thinking about that at all, because these spies were sent for a different reason, but he only sent 2 spies in. I'm sure he was not about to send 12 spies in there. So Joshua sent the 2 spies in, and he wanted them specifically to see the land, and they were right across from this big city of Jericho. Have you ever heard of the city of Jericho? It's a mighty city. It's a powerful city. It's one of the oldest cities in the whole world. Jericho. And Joshua was across there, so the spies came, and they went into the city of Jericho. And as they went in, they went through the big gate. You know, cities back then aren't like our cities. They had big walls around their city, and they had only a few gates through the walls, so you could only get into the city certain ways. And these spies went through the land, and I bet they tried to look like everyone else there so they wouldn't be seen, but they were seen. Now, they weren't stopped, but they were seen. So they went through there, and they're looking, and they're seeing how the city is fortified and defended. And then they went to they found a person who lived on the wall, in the wall of the city, and they asked if they could go stay at her house. And her name was Rahab. And Rahab let those 2 men come in, and she told them they could go up. Moses, you need to act right. She told the men that they could go and stay up on the top of her house. The roof was flat because it was on the wall, and they would stand on the wall and look out, see who's coming. So this part of the wall is where she lived, and she was up there, and she had some flax or some like big, long, like straw or hay, or maybe like stalks of corn kind, and they were all laid out there, and the men snuck under the stalks of corn, let's say, and they hid there, because right behind them, some of the men of the city, some of the king's soldiers, his detectives, came and they knocked on the door and they said, Rahab, we saw 2 men come into the city, and people say that they came to your house. And she was like, oh, you're right. 2 men did come to my house, but they left. They went out the gate and they headed toward the river, and if you hurry up and go, you will probably be able to catch them. She tricked them, didn't she?
Yeah.
And they went out the gate. They went looking. The king's detectives went up. She protected the lives of those Israelite spies. Now, what will happen to her if she is found out?
She might be killed or get put in prison.
Yeah. So she might get killed or put in prison if the king finds out that she is helping the enemy's spies. But why do you think she did that? Why did she help the enemy's spies? She went up on the top of the roof, and she began to talk to the 2 spies from Israel, and she said, I heard about what your God did to the Red Sea. And we have all heard about what your armies have done to King Og and King Sihon. What had they done to King Og and to King Sihon? They had defeated them, right? They'd taken over their whole land. And so she said, everybody in our city, she said, you look at these big, powerful, thick walls, but everybody in the city is scared to death of Israel. We know that you are going to come over and take over our cities. And the men of Israel, what do you think they started thinking? The 2 spies, when they heard her say that, do you think
They didn't know what to do.
maybe they didn't know what to do right then? Some of you older ones, what do you think they started to? Remember I said that God had promised something? scared. Even though they were giants and powerful, he was going to make them scared. And the men of Israel heard Rahab say, everybody in our town is scared. Oh, they thought, God kept that promise. So, they talked for a while there. Rahab told the spies all kinds of things about their city. And mostly more about the people. And even about other cities. Because people from other cities would come. And all the cities were talking about Israel across the river. And how God had helped them. And how they had great power. And nobody could stand up against them. And so all the cities over here are all scared, we might say, scared to death, right? They are scared about the children of Israel. And so Rahab is telling the spies that. But the spies are in trouble, aren't they? Just because she's protected them, they're still inside the enemy city. And when the detectives from the king left, what do you think they did? They went out the gate and they shut the gate. So nobody can get out of the city and nobody can get into the city. So, the two spies, are they inside the city or outside the city?
Inside.
They're inside. How are they going to get out of the city? Rahab said to them, now you know, she said to these men, you know, I have taken my life in my hands by protecting you. And she had, right? She tricked those detectives. If she gets found out, she's probably dead, right? If not dead, in prison. So she said to them, you know I have taken my life in my hands. I'm asking you to do something. Basically, like all the things she was saying, she's saying, I believe that your God is a real God. And that he is powerful. And that he is going to do the things that to Jericho and all of our cities that he has done over there. She believed that God was real. Did the other pagan people believe in God, that God was real? No, but she believed God. She said, now, and so, I'm asking that when God brings all of your people across, and you battle with our city, will you save me and my family alive because I protected you from the king's detectives? That's a fair deal, isn't it? So the men said, we will. Here's what you have to do, though. You cannot tell the king, when his detectives come back, you can't tell them anything that we talked about or even that we were here. You can't do anything, you can't betray us, and you can't leave your house. When the armies of Israel come to fight against Jericho, you must be in your house. And if you want anyone else to be saved, your mother, your father, your brothers and sisters, they have to be in your house. If they are found out in the streets, we won't know that they're from your family and they'll get killed. But as long as they're in your house, they will be safe. And so, Rahab said, that's fair enough. And she got this heavy, thick, red rope, we might say. And because, where did Rahab live? She lived, where did she live? In the house. Where was Rahab's house? In the city?
In the wall.
In the wall of the city. So she must have, either they went off the roof of her house, that was part of the wall, or she had a window in her house, and she hung that big, thick, red rope over the wall, and them two spies got out of the city, not through the gate. They went out the window or over the wall and down there. And she said, now go to the hills. Run to the hills for 3 days. King's detectives will be looking around. And you can keep yourself safe. And once they stop looking, you can go home. Go back to Israel. And please don't forget to protect me. Save me when your armies come to take our city. And they said, we will do that. But here's what you have to do, all those other things, and hang this red rope in the window of your house, and then all of our soldiers will know not to hurt anybody inside the house with the red rope coming out of it. So the men ran off, and what do you think that Rahab did? What do you think she did? The men went off into the hills. What would you do? What do you think she did? She kept the red rope in the window. That's right. You think maybe some people were walking by and saying, "What's Rahab got that red rope in the window for?" That might have been a little scary. She might not have hung it out because the armies weren't there, but she did. She fastened the rope to the window, and when the time came, that rope was outside, hanging alongside the wall. What do you think something else she might have done? Something else. What do you think? Took all her family to her house. She probably went to her dad and said, "Dad, the Israelites are coming. We know, we've seen them over there, but you will never believe what happened. Some of their spies came and I was able to protect them, and they promised me that anybody that's in my house will not be killed, will not die when our city is taken over." And we don't know if anybody didn't believe her, but everybody who believed her, they would have moved, they went to her house. That's right. So, there are some things happening. We're just talking today about how many Israelites? 2. The 2 spies. How many Israelites are there? There's a whole hundreds of thousands over here, and there's some things going on over here that we're going to learn about next week. But we're going to jump ahead a little bit. We won't tell you how, but the Israelites do come across the river, and they do fight against Jericho, and they do defeat and conquer the whole city of Jericho, except for who? Rahab, and everybody that was in Rahab's house was protected. Joshua sent those 2 spies to their house, and they saved her and her parents and her brothers and sisters out of there. And you know what happened? In the end, sometime afterward, one of the princes, one of the rulers of Israel married Rahab. Yeah. And Rahab became not queen. They didn't have queen. She was married to an influential man in Israel, and she had a child, right? And her child had a son, and he had a son. Let me get this right. And his son's name was, one of his sons' name was David. Have you ever heard of David? David, the one who fought Goliath. David, who was the great king of Israel. So Rahab, I don't think she ever met David, because she was like David's great-great-great-grandmother. But this woman, who was a pagan, but she was a different kind of pagan, wasn't she? She believed in God. And she let her actions show that she believed in God. She protected the men of Israel, and then the children of Israel protected Rahab, saved her, because she kept her promise. And now, she kept her promise, the men of Israel kept their promise, but who is the greatest promise keeper? Who is the one that kept the biggest promise? God. God had promised that all the people in all the cities would be scared. I have my Bible, or I have a Bible here, and there's a verse here. The 2 spies, when they came back to Joshua, I want to read to you what they told Joshua. So the spies, they ran off into the hills, right? And then they went back to Joshua, and they said unto Joshua, this is Joshua 2:24. They said unto Joshua, "Truly, the Lord has delivered into our hands all the land, for even all the inhabitants of the country do faint because of us." And do faint means they are very scared. Have you ever been in a situation where you thought everything was good, and then all of a sudden something happened, and you get that feeling in your stomach and in your heart, and you get very scared? No one's ever gotten very scared? Yeah. You get scared, and all of a sudden you feel weak. The Bible says that's how everybody in the land felt because of Israel. And God had promised that he would do that. And Joshua's spies got to hear about it, and they brought that back to Joshua, and next week we're going to see the things that Joshua and the children of Israel did as they got ready. Over just a few days' time. I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. They're going to get across the river somehow, and then somehow they're going to conquer Jericho and begin conquering these other lands. But you're going to have to wait. Or you can read the Bible yourself to find out, right? But to hear from me, we're going to have to wait until next week to hear some more of how God keeps His word. God's word is sure. When He says something, it will happen. We can depend on it. All right. That is all for this week about Joshua and the children of Israel.